begin with the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So, first of all, we're meeting tonight with our business administrator. Is it business manager or administrator? It is administrator. I thought it was a year. Okay. Michelle Croteau. And is it, do I pronounce it correctly or is it Croteau? Croteau is good? Okay, let's make sure we know that's right thing. So, introducing Michelle. I don't know how many of you have had a chance to meet with her. And also, can I just quickly have a show of hands? Has everybody had a chance to meet with our superintendent? Okay, good. He wanted me to double check and make sure that everybody had that. Okay, good. Michelle.
Well, thank you for having me here.
We're delighted
to be here this evening. Sorry there seemed to have been confusion at the last meeting, and I apologize for that, but I'm very happy to be here today. And happy to be here. So, yeah.
Sounds good. Sounds good. I know one of the things that we all talked about that we wanted was to see if there's going to be any changes in the groupings or how you account for things in the budget this year. And give us a heads up so that we can read it.
We'll keep the basic budget categories the same. The account structure is set really by the state in terms of how we track items, but as far as reporting, we'll try to roll up information so that it's in one very concise, easy to follow report. So that we can look at information on the budget that would have a summary and give you the big picture, but then also have the ability to drill down, if you will, into the detail and see the actual accounts that we've done. So we have one sample report that we had actually shared with Andy that was for budget, something that we were looking at, and would give us a way of looking at the information that's very much summarized.
Do you have copies of that?
I did not make additional copies of this. I'm happy to email it to folks and share, but this is literally a one-page document that will give us a picture of the full budget, and it's the function codes, if you will, the types of, whether it's regular ed, special ed, transportation down the side, and then across the top, we'll list the categories and types of expenditures, salaries, benefits, supplies, travel, and then we'll give a total, in the matrix, if you will, but it'll be set up so that you can click on any of the numbers. You get the detailed account numbers that number is comprised of. So does that sound like that would be something that would be helpful? I don't want to provide something that's not going to be beneficial, but this we were thinking would be a way to take all the volumes of information that go into the budget and give you a 30,000 foot view, and then you could share that with in detail.
It's going to go to line item detail, that we can drill down into the line item detail.
How do you get to it if you're not clicking on it?
Well, you would. Yeah, I mean, you're welcome to have printed reports too.
Well, how's the public going to do that?
It's going to be posted on the website.
So in other words, if you don't have a computer, you can't review the budget.
Well, no, that's not the intent. I mean, we can
I
certainly.
know it's not the intent, but that's the result.
I was talking about what we were providing for the budget committee. So we can certainly, talk with the superintendent about what we're actually going to be posting on the website and how to make that accessible to folks as well. I apologize. I thought the question was about specifically to the budget committee.
Yeah, that was my question.
Yeah.
So I'm going to have to look at this on a computer. It's not going to be a hot way to do this with a paper copy.
We can certainly print the paper copy.
So how do you get from, that was my question. How do you
No, we
get
can provide a paper copy for you.
Okay, but you said you click on that and it'll take you to your stuff, other stuff, right?
So let me back up.
Well, how do you do that if you don't click on it?
Can I ask, could you make copies of those, because it's really hard for me to understand what you're saying.
Could you do that, Christine, please? Thank you. I was thinking that, but yeah. This, I'd like to say that this is something that I actually had emailed at one point to, I think it was to you, I don't think it was to, Mr. Angel, but, I think, and you were just kind of getting all started at that point, and, but then Michelle brought it and she just showed it to me, and it was like, this is exactly what I was looking at. I mean, it was just, I was very excited about it.
The expenses.
Because it breaks down.
And, you know,
Let's make sure that we have kind of one conversation going for the sake of the people listening as well as the rest of us, okay? Yeah, so,
certainly, you know, this is meant to be beneficial. If you're not feeling that it's beneficial, then it's a fair amount of time and effort to generate the report. You know, if it's not going to be helpful, I'm not sure that that's an avenue to pursue, but if it seems like it would be useful, then certainly I'll consider down that path, with that information available in that format.
yes, Cheryl.
Have you seen the budget from last year? And if so, can you tell us how this will compare to the way it was set up last year?
I haven't gone through every detail of last year's budget, it was pretty extensive, so I'm hoping that they're able to provide some summary information and get to the detail, you know, if you want to see it, but not start with all of the detail. Also wanting to be able to show you where the big changes are, if, you know, so you don't have to hunt for those, but a summary report that will highlight the comparisons from the current year budget to next year's budget, and you'll be able to identify where those items are.
So what kind of a file is this going to be that we can click on? Is it a PDF file?
It's an Excel file.
Excel?
One of the things that I know that has been difficult for me in the past has been when we've had the old way that the budget was presented. You have it in this way, and then you have it in this way, and then you have it in another way, and then you gotta figure out how they all blend in together. And with this, as I understand it, be able to say, okay, I wanna dig into how much we're spending on information technology. How much is equipment, how much is benefits, how much is salaries, how much is this, and you can click on and dig into each one of those details. Or you can get a paper copy of it for those who want that. You know, but you don't need them all, yeah.
Oh, I'm basically handling just a paper copy.
So this is an example, it's not one of our budgets, it's an example of a budget that was presented at a meeting that I was at. This is actually from the Bow School District. And again, it's meant to really boil the budget down to, you know, one page so you can see the big picture. And in this case, with Bo's budget down the left-hand column, you can see it lists the different function codes and gives a total for the major categories. So we have total instructional programs, total pupil support, instructional support, general administration, those major categories, and so on and so forth to get down to the total budget. Then the columns categorize the type of expense. So the first column is salaries, and then benefits and services, and after that, which would be professional services and things of that nature. A column for supplies, a column for equipment, and then all other falls in its own column, and then the total. So you can see the total by function, if you go across the rows, if you look down the column, you can see the total by object or type of expense. And then you can see the grand total is as well as the proposed budget. And then some comparisons, they have some other percent change and dollar change from the prior year on here. Then the other pages, there's a very simplified graph showing the proposed budget by function, and then a graph showing the proposed budget by object to show the percent, again, graphically, into where the budget dollars are being allocated based on function, based on object. And I can appreciate that sometimes when you're looking at the information, you have several ways that you can look at the budget. You can look at it by function, by object, by school, location, and it can become a little confusing with so many different reports to relate the each report, to the total budget. This one pager tries to give you a look at it from a couple different perspectives to see which one it is.
I know I went to a budget presentation workshop, and this was presented by the person there as a really great way to have that view, and also looking at the bottom to see exactly what percentages of change there have been and what dollars and percentages have changed. So it's really easy to kind of see where it happens and then to dig in to any particular line item that you've got questions about. So I'm pretty excited about it. I hope it works for everybody, but. Yes, sure.
Could we just take one of these as an example and tell me what I will see when I click? So let's say regular education salaries. If I click, what do I click on? The amount, or where do I click?
So it may be good to, at some point, we can do sort of a sample, show and tell with a small example to show how the reporting works, rather than, I'm assuming, and I don't know what folks have seen in the past, but I'm assuming that you're used to seeing the full account number and the description and the dollar amount. So this will show below it each account number that number is comprised of, and the dollar amount for each account number.
So like it would be broken down, regular education by building, or?
Well, there's some flexibility in how that's broken down. For instance, there's a mechanism where when you click on that, it could be an order by building, or you could also put a feature where you could choose to look at this whole report of one building versus another building. So there's a couple different options. I'm not sure, given that this is a new process, we'll probably have to go through a little bit of, bumps in the road as we work out what works best for folks.
And so this process is going to be what's provided to us on November 1st.
That is the goal. This is, as I said, this is, an extensive amount of work to get this up. So it may not be exactly like this, but the goal is to make this.
But we will have access to that file. Will be emailed to individual board of budget committee members.
We can post it on the launch pad. So I think the first question is, would that be beneficial, I guess? To have the ability to drill down into information.
Well, when you click on one of these links and when you flip to the appropriate page, will it actually have the background justification information?
No.
Will it have, I'm sorry, couldn't
The background and justification information like you received last year with that.
No, that will have to be provided probably in paper copy or through another file, because that's just not something that I'm going to be able to pull off in this short period of time to get that embedded.
Well, I'll be looking for a paper copy anywhere when I left the school board superintendent, since we already used the office that the school district has supplied for the computer. So I can't go ahead and do that.
What?
Oh, we have all been issued fresh copies of office from presenting with GOC and Excel
Right.
with the X on the end. So we all got copies. Mine was supposedly reviewed.
that should be reinstated. I mean, you should
I
have,
haven't brought that up with the superintendent.
okay, I mean, you should have access to every single document that's on our launch pad, Chip. You don't?
No.
Oh, we need to get that resolved right away.
Yeah, when,
That's not
Jim,
okay.
would either you or Amy mind forwarding an email so that we can, with that request, and we'll address that?
Absolutely. Jim, let's talk about it. I'll make
Yeah,
sure.
but that's one of the reasons that I've always used paper.
Okay,
So it's actually a lot easier to work with paper than like the computer screen.
okay.
But, no, there was a document that we received last year as part of our budget prep. It was sort of the background. It was the budget with supporting information. And I was wondering whether or not we're going to see that again this year.
Yeah, it would be intent to provide
At some point.
some rationale, so you have information as to what supports the budget requests.
Yeah, something I wanna see, if you look at this, go all the way to the right-hand side, percentage differences. Would you please put pluses with the pluses?
No, minus.
It's probably
Well,
going to be
it's gonna look
color
at,
so that the red.
delete the minuses and put the pluses. This is,
Let me just ask, okay, I was just gonna ask if it's going to be in color. These aren't in color. If it's in color, will the minuses be red and the rest of them be black?
It can be, that,
Would that work?
no, pluses. If you can't do pluses with minuses, then delete the minuses. I mean, I know this is not your budget, this is the whole budget, but the public, Jonathan Public's gonna look at this, especially this first sheet. And we are too, I know we're talking about us, but at some point, Jonathan Public's gonna look at this. And my first glance is, oh, okay. I'd like to see with these pluses, that's what they wanna see.
it's,
If it's zero, then zero.
it's a formula, so it's not gonna generate a plus sign in the formula, so I can remove the column.
No, well, wait a minute, how do you get the negatives?
Because it's in Excel, it's the way it's formatted.
Yeah.
There it doesn't, yeah. I can
Excel
check- I
holds
can-
negatives but not pluses? That's.
Yeah. You can also have it do parentheses, but it's not gonna put a plus sign. It only does.
Well, how do we address that issue?
Can it be where negatives are red and positives are green or black or something? What color do you want? Black?
Could be black.
So usually it's red and black.
I know, I'm just wondering what would work to make it stand out, Charles.
So that somebody, not just us, I am going really on us on this. Me too. It's easily to look at this and say, which ones are going up as well as the ones that are going down. And if this gets photocopied, it's not gonna turn out in red and black.
Can we put like a key that says, minus means going down and nothing in front of it means going up? I mean, I think that's common sense, but maybe some people don't understand that. If there's nothing there, it means it's a plus, it's a positive.
Well, not to get into a real debate, but if you just look at the column, it says, top says percent difference.
Yep.
2.39%. So let's say percent difference from what?
From the year before.
Where does it say that?
Well,
It doesn't.
okay.
Well, again, this is a sample,
I know it is. I'm not trying to make you defend this whole budget.
but I think what would be helpful is, because folks are seeing this for the first time tonight.
Yep.
So if you have thoughts or requests, perhaps if you could filter them through Annie and then you want to compile them and send them my way. There's some leeway with a dynamic report, if you will, in the way it's set up in Excel. If you're gonna have the feature to be able to drill down, there are some, you have to work within the framework of what the software provides. Beyond that, you can have a flat, what I call a flat report, which is just a piece of paper, and we can tell it to do whatever you want. So we could put little plus signs if we wanted, but then that's not gonna be a report that you can drill down and do. It's a flat report. But
If you add a column in between the those two and just put a text plus in there? That's what I usually do, if I wanna show a report that it's plus. Just put another column, a little skinny column, plus, plus, and then the minuses are already there, so you wouldn't have to.
It wouldn't be embedded in
Right.
the Excel process, but I can
Right.
look to see if I can do that.
It would just be a notation, so people don't.
Mary?
I just wanted to say that generally, in this type of a format in Excel, any number that is stated is a positive, is a plus, is in red. Unless otherwise noted, either with parentheses or with a minus or in red when it is a reduction or a credit. That's just how the application works. And you can put a little key code at the top that says all numbers are assumed to be increases unless otherwise noted in red or by a minus. It's really that simple.
I think that, to me, that would work. One of the questions I have is, I know that you're going to be setting up, like under the 1100, 100 series, you're going to be setting up all those salaries with all the line items and such. So will that, if I click on that number, the 7 million, will I get all those salaries, each and every salary for each person, or?
No, that's not something that would be embedded in this, in this time. It would be the total, it would give you the total account number and the total amount that's charged.
So will that be by school?
It can be, yeah.
We've had that in the past by schools, and I think we want to do that. Would we have the ability to compare, when you do that, you've got it set up, will you be able to set up that we can look at the prior year, and how many years can we look at?
You can, the challenge will be really kind of deciding what it is that's gonna be more beneficial. You can see that this has this one number in the middle. So the minute you start adding like 4 columns, you can see how this will just expand beyond one page. You can have multiple pages where one would show the total budget, another one would show the change from this year's budget to next budget, another might show the percentage change versus the dollar change. So it depends on how much you want to put into one document.
I understand that, and about not expanding the number of columns on the first page. What I was asking is, if you click on one, is it possible to have that click expand into like a multi-year presentation with schools?
No, it would have to be a separate report, a separate setup. So it could be set maybe a little bit differently where. So I'd have to think about that, because you can have the functions, and then within each function on the side, the functions and then objects within each function, and then you have multiple columns across the top. So there are different ways to set it up.
Does it work? And Mary, I know you probably, maybe you already know. Go ahead, say what you're going to say before.
Generally, when you have a workbook, an Excel workbook, there are different sheets.
Mm-hmm.
And the sheets can, like, the data from last year's sheet as a consolidated number can link and be carried forward to the front of another sheet or vice versa. So there's the opportunity for layering and for retrieving and drilling down that way, but it's gonna take a lot of time to build that database. And if you start here, year 1, next year, that data could go to the second sheet with the overlaying new sheet being for the following year's budget. But to sit there and say you want to be able to drill back several years from this kind of a format, she would need to build and import that database of all that historical information.
And that was my question, was how complicated would that be? Because one of the things I was going to suggest is that if any of us wants to look at historical data, we look at our prior year's budget books where we do have it. So, we kind of use a combination, and perhaps one addition to this might be, and see how this plays for anybody, is to add, I think it was pages 95 through 97, to add, to update those for current, the past year actual and the current year, and then projection or the budget request, so that we can kind of look at multiple years of those. Just those 3 pages would be a big help. And then we'd be able to ask questions to get kind of that detail.
Would you mind sending me a copy of just those pages?
Absolutely.
So that I can be sure that I'm looking at the same ones that you're.
Yeah. They might be numbered differently, right? Those were my key pages. Anybody, any others? I think, we're gonna, when you send this, will it show if somebody builds, will you be able to send one that shows us how it drills into the background so we can play with it a little bit?
Yeah, it may be beneficial for you and I to perhaps meet.
And that's
go
great, yeah,
through
sure.
how that works, and then we can talk about how best to roll it out from there.
Okay. And I would want everybody to be able to have a chance to see and play with it a little bit, so that when Michelle and I meet, I'm representing what the board is saying, or what the committee is saying. Yeah.
Michelle, you said November 1st was a target.
Yes, November 1st is the first joint meeting between the school board and the budget committee to look at budget.
So are you expecting that at that date we will have the complete budget?
That is the plan. Am I sweating yet?
You're nodding your head.
There's a lot of work between now and then.
Right. Well, the reason that we had asked for it to be presented a little bit early is because it's so much information to try and go through it and go with the timeline and to be able to ask questions, get reasonable answers, give you reasonable time to answer our questions. We were hoping to have that kind of extra week or so that it wouldn't be such a crunch. When we were getting it mid-November, it was really a ton of crunch for us to try and drill down. Everything was written, on pages, 350 pages of stuff that we had to try and go through and formulate questions. So are you thinking that November 1st is a reasonable target date, and that we will have in the format that we can in fact formulate questions, because our timeline says that 1 week later we have to have questions to you.
We spent an extensive amount of time meeting, myself, superintendent, Chair Robert, and Amy Collier, to look at the budget process. And I think we had a great collaborative meeting, and the result of that was this budget timeline. So this is our plan. I am doing my best to hit these targets. There is an awful lot of work to be done between now and then. I'm just beginning to get budget submissions in this week from department heads. Tomorrow is the deadline for that, and then I have to have pieces compiled early next week. So November 1 will come very fast. I won't lie to you about that. There's an awful lot to do. And they're concurrent with this, there are other major tasks that are needing to be completed as well. So but we are striving to have this ready, and also in a format that allows a little more dynamic searching of the data, if you will, so that you can hopefully see where the big changes are, and be able to drill down and get a sense of, okay, well, that makes sense. It won't necessarily have all the narrative in here, but it will at least facilitate the process so that you know where to go to get the narrative, rather than looking, through 300 pages, one account at a time, and trying to, in your head, add it up and have some sense of the total. I think this will help.
Very accurate description of the whole process. Yes, Jim.
I'm assuming you have access to our documents.
I do. I will tell you, I have not gone through them other than
Under fiscal year 2017-18, under the master file, there's a fiscal year 18 budget with details, all funds.pdf. That's the document that I'm looking to see.
You say that again, Jim?
Under fiscal year 2017-18.
Yep.
Just click on that. At the bottom of that list is a PDF file called fiscal year 18 budget with detailed all funds.pdf. This is the document that I think is the
Okay.
most important because it gives the breakdown of the budget plus explanations. There's actually an Excel.
There's an Excel version of it too.
Right.
And I'm sorry, I couldn't get into it, I'm somehow stuck here. This is the one that's the full fiscal year budget that you're talking about?
Correct, with the explanation of,
All the expenses and,
yeah, Memorial School has an increase in maintenance supplies because they're painting 6 walls.
so that's the one that you gave us recently? And if we can get, is that gonna be possible to get that as the projected budget, to get that married in with the projected or the proposed budget from the superintendent?
To show the actual, sorry, I was looking for the file, trying to catch what you were saying as well. So this has FY16 actual, FY17 budget,
Mhm.
and then the difference. And you're wanting to have the same type of report with the next year's projected budget?
Yeah, with the suggestions that are coming forward for next year.
Yep.
Yeah, okay. That works, Jim?
That's an important document.
You can see in this document, it does have the notes or the narrative, if you will. So you'll be wanting to use these reports in concert, where you drill down on here, and you can see, okay, there's this big number that I want to see what it's comprised of. I can see all the different account numbers that it's made up of, and you can go to this and see, well, what information is in there, there's a narrative.
And I'm going to want to know from any budget committee member who wants paper in addition to what's supplied online, what you want. What papers you want, which items you want so that I can convey that. So just, let me know. Yeah, Cheryl.
Oh, wait,
Michelle,
how can you tell somebody what you want until you see it?
Well, you may have other things that you want in addition.
I don't understand that.
Okay.
Well, I don't understand that.
Well,
What am I supposed to ask for when I don't know what I'm supposed to ask for?
Well, you can look at, you might look at last year's budget packet, if there's something in particular that you found very helpful, that you want to make sure, we provide, let me know that. This is a good example, this particular report, the FY18 budget with detail for all funds, rolling that forward with next year's projections, so I'll make a note of that.
I think that's probably one that you're going to want, Charlton. You're probably going to want this as a master, and then you may find that you want to have certain things drilled down in print in addition.
I'm going to want everything that's produced in a document, in a paper form document.
Okay. Cheryl.
Michelle, will we be able to make any notes on this Excel document that we get?
No, you can probably make a copy of it and use the note function, like notes on yours, but.
So will you tell us how we could make a copy of it? It's, I'm assuming it's a protected file, so you can't
Yeah.
change the numbers.
Right,
You
right.
can print it out and
Write on a piece of
and
paper.
write it on. Yeah.
Well,
I
that's,
would caution anybody that's relying on this, because we're already talking tonight about things not working, and if you start making notes on these things, and last year, many times, these machines didn't work, we're gonna have problems.
If I find that any of the Excel forms that the school has given us, I can make a copy and I can manipulate them any way I want. So I've been able to do that on my own computer with anything I want. So that's how I made, for instance, the latest 12 months. Running 12 months is to take the numbers from the administration's file and then make it in my own.
so I could just, go on Launchpad, download the document that's there into my computer, and then I can manipulate the numbers.
That's why we have it in both Excel and the PDF, so that, because the PDF you can't change.
Right.
So if you end up changing something in the Excel, you're kind of confused as to which number actually was yours and which one came from the administration, you can go back and double check. That's why we've asked for it in both formats. Tammy, did you have any questions or any comments on any of this? I just want to make sure.
Any questions?
Okay, Sandy?
I'm gonna go look at my book. And the most marked up pages are the ones we referred to the most. And then we'll send you an email with what pages from that last year's budget, from the info in that book that were the most beneficial for us to compare all of the number data to the historical data, et cetera. So I think that that's gonna be the most beneficial, and then even where all my post-its are, it's gonna tell me exactly what categories, especially question marks, because we had a lot of question marks last year.
Mhm.
So if I'm gonna itemize that and send it to you in an email, so that when you guys meet, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about, and, you know, you'll be able to discern, you know, how best to present that same information when we're changing to this format.
Perfect. Mary?
Well, I'm going on this, I'm a newbie here, so I have nothing to compare it to. I'm excited for the technology and the ability to drill down and manipulate. I'm all about the data, so I'm very, very excited. Thank you.
Yes, Jim?
I know you started off and I must have missed the answer. Last year we had things like maintenance was broken up and divided evenly between 4 schools. Are we going to see that type of thing again? Or is it going to be brought back? Things go from being aggregated SAU to disaggregated with, and it's a quite honestly, it's always been a random number. They've taken Steve Riley's salary, divided it by 4 schools and assigned a portion to, and we know that's not the way it actually works. It makes it very disconcerting for us that have been around for a while to see things get regrouped. You know, one year in one of the replacement plans, they had athletic balls and library books were in the same line item.
Yeah.
And the following year, you know, things change. Next year it's textbooks and library books, and then it becomes textbook separate, library book separate. And we have to kind of set one pattern, but to me it makes more sense that SAU personnel are SAU personnel. Things like, you know, your director of buildings and grounds, that's charged to one account. It's not separated out and portioned out because it's not, anybody that doesn't work continuously in one building should be assigned a cost to that building.
No, I can appreciate your comments, and I understand it can get confusing when it goes from being allocated to a facility to being in the budget and then back and forth. I can't really answer your question right now without getting into the detail and seeing how each group has been allocated and what we need to do going forward. I can share with you that I know the Department of Ed has been pushing to have reports filed at the building level. And so in some cases, they've eliminated the option for general SMU level charges. And because they want you to do exactly that, they want you to look at a basis for allocating the cost and sharing it against the different facilities and schools. So I'm not sure which of those reports have changed yet, but I have heard that. And that's my only thought as to why there might have been some flip-flopping from the past.
That it basically comes down from the Department of Ed.
It's a possibility. I don't know specifically. Yeah.
And would that be a non-negotiable item? Is that something that you would follow their protocol and their format?
In submitting the reports to the state, yes.
So when that information, when those expenses are parsed out, if the state is telling you you need to do it on a building level, and say an administrative overhead for, say, an executive, say, the new superintendent, that salary would be allocated by a population of students in the school, or by, how does that?
Well, there's many different ways that you can allocate it. More often than not, it's allocated based on percent of expenses, but I don't wanna get too deep in the weeds with that, because I don't want folks to start wondering about how that's gonna be done when I'm not even sure that it needs to be done. So let's, as we get through the
Well,
budget
that's
process.
why I was asking the
Yeah.
question, is that some years it would be differentially allocated, some years it would be aggregated.
And you're
And
suggesting that's.
it gets very confusing when you go, okay, that line from last year, then quite often, you'd have a 85% decrease in a line, but it'd be a 60% decreases, and you go in, they're not making sense because it's the same numbers.
And sometimes it's done for different reasons too. You might do it to pool purchases and take advantage of, of price discounts with quantity discounts. I know in last year, before Ellen retired, she had shared with me that they looked at a lot of the online subscriptions, and instead of having all of them at the building level, some of them they had pulled back at the SAU level, renegotiated pricing, and then it was still being used by the different buildings.
Well, that's why the budget with the details is very helpful, because you can read through that. I mean, it's 133 pages, but last year I actually read through it. And my questions were based on stuff I found in there where, okay, you get $78,000 for textbook replacement. What textbooks are
We're gonna try to keep that type of thing as consistent as possible. I don't think our teachers would flip-flop for any reason, from being aggregated to.
Well, ideally, and everybody cares about this, it would be really lovely if we could go back to the days when we had a whole stick binder with the budget in it, and every page, every administrator was required to justify what they were spending. I realize that we can't go back to, 22 reams of paper to, and forklifts to carry them. But it would be nice if we can. There's a lot of stuff in this where there's just a number, you just scroll that and you go, okay, yeah, what is the number here?
Cheryl?
I have two things. One, what you were just talking about, how things shift for maybe purchasing convenience. I don't have a problem with that. The problem is when, like Jim was saying, if you're looking at this percentage difference and you see, 112% increase, that of course is going to be a red flag. If somewhere it could be noted by those. But the reason for this is because of a change in how it was categorized, we wouldn't be so alarmed at seeing things like that.
So some of that will be answered by this type of format, because if it's really just a matter of a change from it being budgeted 100% at a general district level versus allocated to every building, then on a report like this, they're gonna net out. And it's not gonna show as an increase or decrease, it's gonna show at the level, when they're all put together in total. When you drill down, then you'll see, flip-flops, and it'll, I think, be easier to visually see that, one line went down and another line went up, because the numbers will be right next to, in the same area, generally.
The other thing I wanted to know was typically we have at the beginning of the budget, it used to be many years ago called the ad budget.
Yes.
Which are things that were not in the budget before. Say, for example, we need a speech therapist because we've got an increase in students who have needs in that service area. So that would be something that was not in the budget before, and then there would be, those things would kind of be totaled up in the beginning of the budget to say these are things that are brand new to the budget. also things that would be ongoing. It's not gonna go away. Like a new teacher, is gonna be in
New bus to cover student population.
new bus, those kind of things that are not one-time expenses. And then we had something else that was a one-time expense. We need to
So new requests that are one-time versus new requests that will have some
be incorporated in the
continuing.
budget, right?
And those items used to be segregated. They were in the bottom line of the budget, but they weren't. If we were talking about a new teacher, the new teacher was a separate item held out over here, not in the salaries. Those were added up and added in, but we were able to see new,
They'll be embedded in the budget as a whole, but they'll be identifiable in terms of a new budget request, and certainly within the summary report that shows, the budget is inclusive of these new items. Also, equally important will be to note, any decreases.
Right.
And that's a change from the status quo, year, if you will.
Okay, we had a couple of other things that, in looking at our agenda, one of the things that we discussed last time was a request not to use acronyms, but instead the entire words. And I've had that conversation with Tom and with Michelle, and they're just like, okay, we'll do our very best.
We'll do our best, you know, perhaps provide us some kind of cheat sheet where we can. And it's a huge budget, and sometimes, it's very lengthy, to put I'm not sure that we're gonna capture every single acronym and eliminate it, so we'll try to provide, a definition list, if you will. But certainly, if you see anything in the budget that you're questioning what it is, you want clarification if it's an acronym, we'll be sure to give you a response.
if anybody's on those, she'll know about it.
That'd be a nice thing to click on. Here's the acronym, click, and up comes what it means. How about that?
Maybe not this year.
I'll put it on our list.
Yeah.
Put it on your list and, on the request.
Going on to, that's kind of a good segue with the next thing on our agenda, which is review of prior and current year budget information and when it's to be given. That's something that we've talked about quite a few times, and with Michelle getting up to speed in a new job without any workbooks on how things were being done. It was all in the prior BA's head. And so there's no kind of system that's in place for her to just implement. So not only is she doing the job, but she is creating and also documenting a system so that there is one going forward. The process has meant that it's taken her a little bit longer than what would be ideal. And I've been assured that we will have all that information that's on our budget timeline at the time we get the budget. So we will have all the information on what was done last year, what's being, in the current budget and planned for the current year, and how that translates for the future. So just wanted to let everybody know that. We already did the aggregated and disaggregated. And like our request for budget proposals in both print and in Excel on Launchpad, and we're going to further define those. So I think that pretty well covers everything that we had on our agenda. Is there anything anybody can think of that they need to ask or want to clarify at this point on the budget and how we're going to get it? Yes.
Actually, no, I think that's the next.
Okay.
When we're prepping for the November 1st meeting, I assume it's sometime, I don't know how many days before we will get the budget documents to
I'm not sure.
review.
I'm not sure we will.
Yeah, that is a presentation at that meeting.
Oh, okay.
The difference in what's being proposed this year is that it's divided into segments. So we're going to get the budget documents, and instead of having the whole presentation with the Q&A with all the administrators there that night, where that's kind of the one chance we get to do it,
Yeah.
we are going to have a week to be able to go through and to look at those documents and look at some of those districts, and we're going to go through our process. We're gonna look at some of the different departments, not districts, but some of the departments like the elementary schools and IT and so forth, and come up with questions on those. And then the administration's gonna have a week to answer those, and then we're going to do it again with the rest of it. So we'll be able to do it, and then that doesn't stop. I mean, just because.
No, I just,
Yeah,
in prepping mentally for November 1st, because I knew some things were out, I can be there on November 1st. I don't want to be handed the slick handout that we've had. And yeah, it's a derogatory term, but we've been handed something that you go, okay, I've never seen this before. An administrator stands up and says on page 122, on line 34, there's an increase for something. And then you sit there at the end and he goes, are there any questions? And you're going, probably 10,000 of them, but I tried following along with you. This is the first time I've seen this. It's the public document that that we get presented. It's not the data that we can work with. It's
this year we're not getting it.
well. That's I'm wondering what we will be receiving so that we can.
Well, you'll be receiving the budget information on that evening, on November 1st. You'll receive a document that allows you to drill down into the detail.
This one.
And I've not gone through and identified all the other reports that were in last year's packet. So I'll have to look at those to see which ones, can be attached, and feel free to share with Annie those that you wanted to continue. As you mentioned earlier, the one that had all of the detail. So that is a great report. It gives you all of the narrative. But the challenge with that report is that you can't add or summarize information that's just a flat.
I honestly, on that report, I do not need anything but the narrative because I work with paper. I'll be able to flip from page to page and go, okay, it's consistent through PowerPoint, or it's not consistent throughout. And I will be able to make notes and ask questions based on that versus, this is really lovely, but this is more what I think we're handing to the public. For them to be able to understand how the budget has been separated. And I'm sorry, but pie charts, I'm an accountant type person who wants to be able to look at numbers, look at justifications, and say, yes, I agree with that, or no, I don't agree with that.
So I think we gotta clarify when we look at the budget calendar, and I'm assuming that folks.
That's what we received last year.
So this is the full presentation and the PowerPoint document.
PowerPoint presentation.
Okay.
And so that kind of gives you an idea of,
Is that last year's budget book?
no, that's just the PowerPoint that you presented.
Oh, okay.
Then at the opportunity to, just when you print out your PowerPoint, so you can write questions and stuff, but that, I'll make a copy of that. So you
Okay,
can have an
perfect.
idea. Because things came up and, you had an opportunity to write notes on the side.
The evening of the 1st, we didn't expect you necessarily to have all your questions that evening. It's
Oh,
the first
I
time
know
you're
that.
seeing it, and, have the opportunity to hear the presentation and to ask questions. But we had, I think, the Tuesday the 7th, right, was questions about the elementary school, middle school athletics and technology would, be due at that point. Then there's a second meeting to look at.
And we have to adopt this. We haven't adopted this calendar yet, but this is the one that we kind of came up with as I sat with Pete and Tom and Michelle to try and figure out what was gonna work for what I understand are budget committee priorities and requests, and what the school board needed and what the administrators could do, given that they get in very early in the morning and work till late at night. And so it was kind of coming up with something that hopefully everybody here will adopt and feel comfortable with and feel like it meets our needs. So go ahead, you can go ahead with it.
Well, I was just gonna say, that might answer some of your questions then in terms of the process, because we did look at how we could kind of stagger the meetings, if you will, so that we had an initial presentation. There were a couple of evenings that school administrators would be there to present their budget, but we weren't asking them to attend all of them. Questions could come forward after the presentation, so there'd be a window of time where there'd be a presentation, time to review the budget, and then questions would be due, and then we had a schedule where responses were due, so that we could keep that process moving and give you ample time to look at the budget and us ample time to respond as well. I don't know if you want me to walk through these dates, Katie, or if you want to walk through the dates.
Well, folks, do you want to deal with that right now?
Yeah,
Going
I'm
through it? I
not
mean, it is something for our agenda, and it is something we were going to do. I was kind of thinking we would keep you here for that. Let you go and go on about your life and get ready for tomorrow.
Well, I won't argue that.
Yeah.
But I want to make sure that I'm answering any questions that you have.
Yeah, and that's why I kind of wanted to wrap up this part with Michelle. Is there anything anybody else might have that you want to? We really, I think what we're hearing is, let me know what it is you want. I'll meet with Michelle, and we'll make sure that we'll figure out a way to get what you need, what each individual needs.
Yeah, and I just want to add that this is the first year that I'm here. We worked really hard with Andy and Tom and Peter to look at what we can do to enhance the process and work collaboratively, and I believe that's the intent. So if there are things that we can do to make this a little smoother, I'd love to hear them. I can't promise you the world, but I can promise you that I will hear every request, and I will do my best to meet that. That's not all that I can do at this point. These changes are intended to make this helpful. If it's not feeling that it's helpful, then I want to hear that too.
Especially because you do a lot of work to get them.
Exactly, yeah.
So if they're not going to be helpful, let's let her know.
Right. I know for me, some of this structure for me personally will be helpful because it will allow me very quickly to key in on where changes are, look at things from a very summarized view right down to the lowest level of detail. So some of it, will be beneficial for me, but I want to make sure that it's going to be helpful for you as well.
Yeah, it remains to be seen. I mean, it sounds good, but until we get our hands on it, I think then we'll get a better understanding of it.
Okay. Well then, thank you very much, Michelle, for coming and being with us, and we'll let you go home.
Great, well, thank you for having me, and I look forward to working with you guys on the budget.
Thank you. I'm going to ask for a very brief recess, if we could. The next on our agenda is to talk about the budget calendar and our procedures. So I've got it pulled up here. I'm not going to do an enlargement, but as Michelle started to go through, obviously we have today to set up our meeting, but then November 1st is the joint meeting, and that's at 6 p.m. with the school board. The leadership will be present. Then by Tuesday, November 7th, what we set up was to have, there are a couple of things. One is that instead of 3 meetings with administrators, we're now proposing to you all for your acceptance having 2 meetings, and they're both joint meetings with the school board, so that the administrators don't have to duplicate meetings. The other thing is that we had originally said that we would like to put in questions on a Monday and get answers on a Thursday. And what Michelle has asked for is that if we could put it in the week before and give them a full week to give us answers, because it takes them some time. So that's incorporated in here, and hopefully it's going to work for everybody. Obviously, if you don't get to all your questions in 1 week, then you put them in the following one. You know, I mean, it isn't like we can do it one time and you miss out on the deadline and that's it. So let me just go through how that translates on here. November 7th is the day for the questions on the first parts of the budget, which are elementary, middle school, athletics, and technology, as well as the replacement plans that are due to the chair and to the administration. As well as the replacement plans, I'm sorry. Those were, instead of the capital replacement plans, as you pointed out last time, Jim, the replacement plans. So those come to me on the 7th, and then I am going to correlate them to make sure that they're kind of grouped together and that we don't have duplications, and then get them to the administration by November 8th. And they're going to plan to give us answers on November 15th on those. Question is, are you going to want to have a meeting on November 9th with no administrators present to review the budget, perhaps to review how it's laid out, to make sure we're all comfortable with it? How do you feel about that? Think it's a good idea? Cheryl? Any thoughts? I mean, I don't want us to meet and waste everybody's time, but if you think it's a good idea.
It's just kind of hard to tell.
Okay. And why don't we leave it as an option?
Yeah.
And if you know, there's a forum of people who want to have a meeting on November 9th, then we'll have one. And I'll also say that, you know, I'm going to obviously spend some time with Michelle on doing this thing. I'll be happy to sit down with anybody and kind of go through it and help you figure it out, because I will have gotten a little lesson. So if we can do that either on November 9th all together, or I'll do it with you individually. Then November 15th, a joint meeting, that's a Wednesday, with the school board on the answers to the questions on those first 4 departments. Then on Sunday, November 19th, if you would, and this is earlier than, it's jumping ahead. It's earlier than the following Monday or Wednesday because of Thanksgiving. So what we thought is by the 19th, if you could get your next set of questions in to me about the high school, special ed, and facilities, as well as any district-wide questions, and then I can get them on to the administration on the 20th. So that gives them a couple of extra days in their week that includes Thanksgiving. Then what we set up is to have another joint meeting with the school board, but this one we're going to host on a Thursday. I explained to them that not everybody can come who's on budget committee on a Wednesday night. And so we wanted to be fair, and also it is our job to present the budget, So what we agreed to is to have the next meeting on November 30th as a joint meeting with the school board, with answers on those questions with administrators present. And I do want to point out that the law says that we can ask any question, we have a right to any information. We do not have the right to meet with administrators. It's a request that we make, and they are obliging us by meeting with us. So, you know, there is a cooperation, and, you know, I'm glad about that. But the law doesn't say that we have the right to insist that they come in. So it's good that they're coming.
No, we have the right to request any information of it.
Yes. Yep. But to have them actually here answering questions.
Well, yeah, we don't have
That's an
subpoena
extra.
power, we can't force somebody to stand in front of us.
Exactly. So that meeting would be at 6 p.m. And the reason for 6 p.m. on a Thursday, and I hope it's going to work for everybody, is that the administrators start in the morning, and it's to allow them to leave, you know, but not have to stay the extra hour or so in order to meet with us at 7. So I'm gonna ask if we can adopt that. And Charlton, I can see you're not happy.
Well, I wouldn't call myself a salaried professional when I start counting hours.
Okay. Then December 6th would be, the school board is going to vote on their budget recommendation that they have to give us. That's part of what their duty is. Then on the 7th, we will meet the next day and we'll begin to put ours together. So then we have meetings that are potential on the 7th and the 14th to put together our budget. And as Jack had proposed last time, we're going to go through department by department and put it together. We will then be giving it, the next board meeting would be on the 20th, and they'll vote on our proposed budget. If we have discrepancies and serious difficulties, then we have a meeting scheduled on the 21st to meet with the school board here, so that we can try and iron out and see if we can't come up with a joint budget that will be the best for the district. Then, of course, we have the public hearing, meet and finalize our budget, and our proposed budget goes to the school board, we vote on our warrant articles, and then the deliberative session, and then the second session.
Is that 21st, that is 6 p.m. or 7 p.m. since we're inviting the school?
I'm sorry?
Is the meeting on December 21st at 6 p.m. or 7 p.m. since it says we'll invite the school board to?
I would think it would be at 7, it's our regular meeting.
As we thought.
Yeah.
The only thing that's missing is the, on or about February, or actually on or after February 7th, we have to meet for a final vote on the budget and the warrant articles for the ballot.
Yeah, and if you look at that February 7th, it says deliberative session, and then in non-bold, it says budget committee votes on final budget. I'm proposing that we meet after the deliberative session and vote, you know, as we've done a couple of times.
As long as it,
Instead of having another meeting coming back. And
please, it's not going to be standing behind a curtain on stage trying to debate what just transpired in our positions. It'll actually be planned and set for, we have a room to go to.
Yes, a real meeting. Yeah, a real meeting, okay. And hopefully, because you all have said that it's okay for me to give a 10 or 15 minute presentation, it won't be at, 11 o'clock at night. Hopefully it will be a very efficient, friendly, positive meeting, and we'll vote, and we'll just say nice, and we'll allocate our MS 27, is it, or MS 25? Allocate our required reporting.
So,
Yes.
you done?
Yes.
So, what is November 1st? Is that the presentation of the superintendent's
Ideas on
ideas to the school board?
to the school board and to us.
Okay. So it's not like a public hearing or anything?
Oh, no.
Okay. All right. Then you say there's going to be, can you tell me what your vision of the joint school board meeting is? What you think is going to happen?
I think, okay.
What do you think is going to happen when we actually sit down on it?
On the first, I think it's going to be a matter of any questions that people have for clarification on the budget as it's presented. On the 15th, the school board will have come up with questions that will have been submitted to the administration, and we will have come up with questions that have been submitted. We will get back before that those answers in writing so that we have all of those. And then we will have a chance to talk with the administrators for any further clarification on those answers, and you go through them.
So it's just a question time for both boards together to ask questions.
Yes.
It's not a discussion
No.
time. Okay. All right.
That's on the 15th.
On the 15th.
What's
And
the
then
15th?
also on the 30th.
I don't like right now, I cannot.
I know, and neither can Cheryl. Yeah, I know, and that was why I fought very hard for the 30th, for our having our own, on a Thursday night, because I know that for some of us, it's not part of our commitment that we made to be there on the Wednesday night.
Okay.
Same as the school board hasn't made a commitment to be there on a Thursday night, so, yes, Cheryl.
Is there one of these dates that we will be discussing the slideshow, reviewing the slideshow?
Yeah, after the 14th, and, so on the 20th, and I would hope on the 14th and on the 20th, or on the 21st, and then January 4th is kind of the final review of the slideshow. The slideshow being on the 11th. And not just the slideshow, but we also talked about other supporting documents that we're going to want to have on, available to the public. So those two, we want to have out there on, have them ready to be posted right after the 4th, so that they're there for the public hearing for people to review. Can I have a motion to accept this?
So,
Okay.
you want to do that?
Okay,
I
Charlie?
cut somebody else second.
Okay. Did you get that? Okay. Any further discussion, changes? Okay, all in favor, please say aye. And that would be unanimous. Thank you. Okay, next on our agenda is to accept the minutes of September 28th.
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion?
Corrections.
Okay.
On page 1, under report from school board, it should say at a joint meeting with the budget committee. And then on page 2, at the top, Ms. Mahoney announced the hiring of assistant principal for the middle school and the vacancy of guidance director position for the high school. Nice decision to announce the hiring.
Would that be correct?
Okay. And Charlton Swaley questioned the school board and budget committee meetings that are scheduled. I believe that was a discussion about the schedule that you had presented from the school board. And just a couple of times, Mr. Daggett instead of Doggett.
I already took care of that. That's
Okay, good.
a typo.
And then, yeah. I just was wondering about the statement on the last page in the middle where it says meeting to be held on January 4th, 2018. To look at presentation for public hearing, the presentation is to be tweaked and published. And I feel like that should be clarified as at that meeting, as it says on here, the public hearing presentation and supporting documents will be reviewed and finalized. I think that's a more accurate description. Other than that, that's it.
Thank you. Anything else? Yes, Tammy.
On page 1, under report from school board, it should say Tammy Mahoney, school board representative, stated that the superintendent has indicated that conservative budget proposals will be announced. Okay, November 1.
Anything else? With those amendments, when we have a vote, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That would be unanimous, thank you. Okay, report from the school board. Christy, by the way, good job. First time doing it, that's really great, thank you. Yes, Tammy.
Okay, the school board met on October 4th. So let's see, we received the official October 1st enrollments. I have uploaded that document in the, let's see, under budget committee, EC member working docs, FY 2018-19 budget process. There's an enrollment information folder. I uploaded the 10-117 enrollments to that folder for you. Let's see, just summarize. The total enrollment as of October 1st is 1,601 students. That's down from 1,614 students on September 1st. So the official enrollment is 1,601.
And versus the projection last year was 1,632.
Superintendent gave a report, and he addressed, he mentioned that his administrative team, he had met with them for about 6 hours to work on their budget process, and he has given them 3 directives. What do you need to achieve our goals? What would the budget look like from one year to the next with the same staffing and usual salary increases? And what would the budget look like if we kept it flat from year to year and reduced the amount of the difference salary increases, which is about $800,000 or 2 to 3% of the budget. And as you know, he's working on his proposal for November 1st. Okay, we discussed the guidance, I guess it's the counselor director position at our last meeting, and there was a motion, there was some discussion about, quite a bit of discussion about how to approach the process of that, but there was, motion was approved to provide Mr. Ambrose with the opportunity to hire a counselor director position, the salary to be discussed. That motion was approved, so he has been given the approval by the school board to hire a counselor director. And we talked about, you mentioned at our last meeting, I mentioned that the school board had discussed goals. We did finalize and adopt school board goals at our last meeting. Those are, I don't believe those are published. Mrs. Gannon had asked me for, I think, to supply a copy of goals. I'm not prepared to do that tonight, but I can read them to you if you're interested. Otherwise, they'll be published on the same website. There was some discussion, I'm not sure, I just want to mention, there's some discussion that the school board is undergoing regarding the assessing the liability of the old high school campus. There's where the school board is, the business administrator is working on she's undergoing the process of getting a proposal for a scope of work to determine some of the, what the cost would be if we want to, just to give us an idea of what the cost would be. This is not something that the school board has decided to go forward with. It's just something that is being reviewed, but I just want to mention that. But so there's some talk of what the cost would be to demolish certain sections at the high school campus. Because the feeling is there's a significant exposure in terms of liability because of the condition of some of the buildings. So I just wanted to mention that. And we will also receive the results of the superintendent survey that we discussed at our last meeting. That I think is on the district website. The board hasn't, I guess the board has received official notification, and it's certainly been announced publicly that Mr. Ambrose was offered and accepted the offer to become our permanent superintendent, so he's no longer our interim superintendent. So we have hired him, Mr. Ambrose, as our superintendent.
Is it a 3-year contract?
Pardon?
Is it a 2 or 3 year
I believe it was a 3-year contract.
Including the contract.
Right, this is the first year of the 3-year contract, that is what we discussed.
So there's no superintendent search?
Sorry?
There's no superintendent search?
Correct, well, that's, yeah, right, we're not, right, the board decided not to undergo the expense and the time. I was sort of, I don't have a lot of details on that, I'm not sure most of that was discussed in non-public, so I'm not sure when I'm at liberty to, I'm not sure, sorry, but, we're we're not going to undergo a search.
I know, I was meeting with, are you done?
That is pretty much it, unless anyone has any questions.
I would, yeah, go ahead.
That guidance, that's not a new position, the guidance director.
It's not a new position,
There's
it's
something
actually
for it, but
replacing the
replacing.
guidance director who resigned two or 4 weeks ago,
Okay. That's what I thought, but just.
a replacement.
Can we have a copy of the superintendent's fee contract added to our launch pad?
Okay.
They are public documents.
Yep. Yes, Cheryl?
I had a question about that, counseling director position, it's a different title. I think there was some discussion in the board about that. And is that the job description the same as what it was for the director of guidance, which I think was the former title?
I don't have the answer to that question, but I will defer to a school board member in the audience if they would like to answer that. We have one from the personnel committee here.
When we were interviewing for the position, we were told that the title had changed from guidance director to counselor director. I think it has something to do with the state, but I'm not 100% sure of that. And I looked at the job description for the position that was being filled. I didn't compare it to the job description for the position for the person that was leaving, for how their job was described. So I can't definitively answer that.
Would it be possible for us to get, this was, as you may recall, a hotly debated position last year when we were looking at the budget, and it was being suggested that that position be eliminated. So I'm wondering if it has a different job description, and also what the salary associated with that is. Get that?
That hasn't been negotiated to my knowledge. As far as I know, the position hasn't been filled yet.
Okay.
The salary was
Okay.
not specifically determined.
Maybe a range or something.
I'm sure that's,
I believe it was capped at the current salary.
Cap
Actually,
or caps?
that's not it. The motion was to provide Mr. Ambrose with the opportunity to hire a counselor director position with a salary to be discussed and decided in non-public session, which has not occurred yet.
The other question I have is, I know that the board is talking about the liability of the old high school campus, but is there an update on the negotiations with the town of Kingston?
There wasn't, I can defer again if our other school board member would like to mention,
Could you repeat the question, please?
The seminary, any update on the seminary
Update on the
discussions?
status of the negotiations with the town of Kingston?
We received one appraisal for the properties, the 2 lots, Chase Field and the seminary campus. And we haven't heard from the school board yet as a task force, and we're hoping the school board will meet in non-public to discuss the appraisal.
okay. There being no further comments on that, thank you very much for your school board report. Cheryl, can we,
Can I,
oh, yes?
I forgot to ask something. Can you just go back to when we were talking about budget procedures? Michelle made a comment about the administrators will be making presentations to us. What does that mean to you? We're not going to get a bunch of PowerPoint presentations, are we?
No, we may on the first.
Yeah, no, I know.
We may on the first, but definitely, it's gonna be Q&A, after that.
Well, when we have the administrators come in here,
Yeah, no, they won't be doing the PowerPoint.
I didn't think so. Just to be sure that it's okay. It's a question and answer.
Yeah.
Sorry, thanks guys. But we missed that.
No, it's all about, that's what we're about today. Okay, Cheryl, the proposed guidelines for our budget committee. Should we start with a motion to
Let's think about
accept?
that.
Yeah.
And then we'll open for
Can we have a motion to accept, for purposes of discussion?
So moved.
Okay, and second?
For discussion.
Okay, so, yes.
The subcommittee met, and took into consideration the feedback that we got from the committee at the September 28th meeting. And also there was one, submission of, suggestions for, revising the guidelines. And, this document was sent out to the committee, for their review, and I believe it's on the agenda tonight that we will review and vote on, the document. I don't know if we want to go through line by line, or, how we want to do this.
Well, I think, I'd like to suggest that people who have suggestions about it or comments about it, make them. First of all, I think, do you have anything further that you want to say about them? And I want to give you and Mary a chance to both say something,
I think that's it, we did, and I think you can see a difference in, certainly in the length of it. That was one of the comments was made, was the length of it. Also, we had a comment that bullets would be nice, so we included some bullets to make it, I think, a little more readable. And we condensed a lot of things. We also had included some possible suggestions of rewording things that we received from a document from the New Hampshire School Board Association's sample rules of order. So those, the two that we included in here, were some ideas that we had and were worded differently in the original document. And we thought that these conveyed the same purpose that we were looking for in those particular items. There was one addition that was not in the original, and that is on page 2. It says the very bottom, proposed additional that was not in the original draft. And this was after Mary and I had read the New Hampshire School Board Association sample rules of order, and thought that this was a good point of order, but the chair would not accept negative motions. It's the way it's worded so that when you vote for it, you're actually voting against something. It just confuses things, so we thought that that was a good thing to include in some process guidelines. Mary, do you want to add anything?
I do not, thank you.
Okay. Comments?
Sure.
You have some? I have some too.
Who wants to go first? Me?
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I handed everybody a copy.
Yep.
Jim and I looked at these and understanding the reality of the situation. We went through this length, as you can see, and on here is the rewording that I think Jim would agree, would like to see done. And we can do this as a whole, or we can spend whatever time is necessary to do this line by line.
I think it
Everybody
might be,
can read this,
I think it might be good to go by each one, because you may have comments and then other people may have comments on the same one. So it might be a good way to do the revisions.
Everybody want to do it line by line then? Okay.
Or item by item,
Or
like
item by
number
item.
1 is.
Yeah, I guess so. So in the first sentence, budget needs to be capitalized. I could do some of this. We want to do some of it, Jim, when they get moving.
Sure, what I'm doing is,
Offices.
that there was a copy on the computer.
That was my changes, I uploaded
I'm
them.
taking what your sheet is on here with different color and striped out and adding.
Okay.
So if you want to start
All right.
Hired, I'll take over.
Under officers, you'll see there's three positions here, chair, vice chair, and secretary. I don't know what recording means, it doesn't need to be in there. And I would see delete the committee will elect a member recording secretary as a backup. And simply say the secretary shall be responsible for the meeting minutes when the paid secretary is not able to attend a meeting. You can see what was done and crossed off. And I'll just finish on the offices. There was a note perhaps in the future David may add some things. One of the things I want to see added to avoid the games and fiasco that went on last year of school board regarding when officers were elected, that we're going to do this, put in here when officers are going to be elected and who's going to elect them. As you know, last year we had so-called school board members who didn't even run, electing officers.
Look, we know about that, yeah, but, you know, let's
The
not.
purpose of it.
All right.
Anyways, so you see that's tried to be addressed in here. So I guess we'll stop there. Maybe let's discuss this before we discuss officer responsibilities.
I was in agreement on taking out the word recording because our recording secretary is right over there. I thought, you know, it's already in the fund. We already have it in the budget, so I didn't think that was necessary verbiage. I'm fine with just saying the secretary shall be responsible for the meeting minutes when the paid secretary is not able to attend the meeting.
Didn't we take a vote on whether or not to appropriate the funds for the secretary?
We don't appropriate them. The
I
school
mean,
appropriates all money.
Right, we have a budget, but didn't we make a vote to spend a portion of our budget to hire a secretary? Didn't we, as a committee, vote for
We
that?
don't have a budget.
We do actually. We
Oh,
do.
that's right, you do.
We do, and Tom actually came to me and told me that we have a budget for that and that he wanted to hire a secretary. So it never really came to the board.
So we didn't vote it, just.
No, I mean, he administers the district, so, yeah. We didn't hire him, he did. He hired Chris. Or did Phyllis interview? Phyllis.
That all, yeah.
I was just gonna say, Phyllis can't hire anybody.
No,
Yeah.
but she, interviewed.
Well, then the school board can hire.
But the discussion was, prior to having a paid secretary, the secretary was someone on the committee. And we had a number of discussions about that. Jim, and I think myself were people who felt very strongly that if you're going to participate, be able to participate in the budget committee, which is a difficult process that requires a lot of focus, but to have to take minutes as well is a disadvantage for your full participation. So I think that for future committees, to know that that this budget committee feels it's an important thing to have someone who is not a committee member be the person who records the minute, because the secretary can have other duties as well. So recording means basically their job is to record the minutes. But that if that person is not able to attend the meeting, that there would be someone who was elected or could be appointed by the chair to take minutes. Because I know that the chair has sometimes when
Yeah, and
the
the trial that one.
right, that's a process.
Right.
That we all felt was
Okay, I personally, I think that's okay the way it is. Sandy, do you have anything else?
Treating the way it is.
The way you've added
Oh,
with that,
okay.
and, yeah.
Right, what's up at the top under officers should go down under the secretary will. Shall be responsible for the meeting minutes.
Yeah.
In the event, okay, so we don't. Under the chair, I don't think we need to direct the conduit of information And
Yeah, I think that was,
that was a recommendation
Actually, comments.
last week. I just thought I found the same thing, would be the conduit of information from the committee, period, because that's the role of the chair, and that's the chain of command. Attendance needs to be underlined, attendance at just plain old scheduled meetings, and then,
Wait, I haven't seen it.
Sandy, where are you?
Whoa.
Okay.
Can we just go back to the previous one? Because, since this is our subcommittee, I'm gonna have Mary and I do the revisions that you're saying. So I'm looking at the one that Charlton and Jim did, and they took out recording secretary. Did we agree we're gonna take out recording?
It's not an office. Right, Jim? It's not an office.
Secretary is an officer that
Recording office.
the recording secretary is.
I'm not taking this apart, please understand this.
No, that's fine, yeah.
It's
No,
really not.
Secretary.
So it's to take it and make it secretary.
Secretary.
And then, are we going to take out the committee will elect a member as a recording, a secretary as a backup, or are we gonna leave that?
I'm fine with leaving it the way it is. Leave
Okay.
that part in.
All right,
I'd like adding in the secretary should be responsible for the meeting minutes.
so that will be under officer responsibilities.
Yeah, the secretary should be responsible for the meeting minutes when the paid secretary is not unable to attend a meeting.
Right, however, we can eliminate the
And that could go down.
The first part, the committee will elect a member recording secretary as a backup. That needs to be struck because we have a secretary who is a member of the budget committee. So we're not going to elect a recording secretary also.
Right.
So that's a redundancy that creates a fourth officer position.
Cheryl, how about if it just says the committee will request that the district fund a paid recording secretary who will not be a member or participant in meetings, period.
Yeah.
And then under duties,
Yep.
put the secretary should be responsible for the meeting minutes when the paid secretary is not able to attend a meeting.
Yep. Okay, good. Chair officer responsibilities?
Well,
Chair?
this whole thing that Jim and Charlton suggested with the full committee meeting shall be called, I think that's appropriate.
Yeah.
Is that okay with everybody?
Yep.
Okay, so go on.
Just now we're under officer responsibilities.
Right.
I mean, what's been changed?
Somebody's raising their arms and
Is that what you want? Officer responsibility.
What is this document that's projected? I didn't see that.
This is one that I uploaded.
correct,
It's just-
and
it's
what
just-
you grayed out, I put in all of Charlton's comments.
Okay. But I don't have them on my screen.
Oh, okay, they're showing up there and they're showing up on my screen. If you click on refresh,
Are they showing up there? Oh, good, okay, good.
except for the
Well, I can't look at both of these at the same time, so I'm looking at the one that Charlton
Good.
and Jim gave to make my notes so that we can
I think it's
give you guys a
for the
final.
video that we were having. Yeah.
Well, okay, but that's not any kind of official document or anything that's up there. All right,
No,
so officer
it's a member
responsibilities. A member document?
One of the members, yes, is a combination of a proposed document. It's not an official document. There is no official document at this point. Okay, so we go on with the description.
Chair will prepare agendas, conduct meetings, and be the conduit of information from the committee to Jim and Charles instruct to the public, district, and district administrators. I think those should remain.
To the public and district administrators are the only people other than the community. The information goes out to the public. Technically, the district administrators are also members of the public, but it's redundant where.
Well, I think it's there to prevent individual members from emailing or contacting district administrators. And that's something that the district administrators have requested, and I think is the most efficient way for committee members to communicate to district. I think we pretty much all agreed that, the chair has many times said, things come through me, and I think it makes it easier for the district administrators to not to have to deal with individual members.
I think what Jim is saying, and I intend to agree, though, is, be the conduit of information from the committee. I mean, that just kind of says it without having to re-say it.
Right, and,
We go to the chair.
yeah.
Yeah.
And that's from the committee. That's when the committee has made a decision. If I choose to send an administrator, my personal opinion, that's only the committee.
Right, and that
Yeah.
would be in any of these guidelines.
But yeah, it's not up to me to look at an administrator and say, last night with the committee, that's not my job, not my job to pass along the committee.
That's what this is saying. This is clarifying that it's not. So in case new members come on the committee and think, well, I'm just going to call the superintendent and tell him what I think at the committee. This is defining that.
Any one of us could do that, say, gee, last night at the committee, this happened and I do not agree with it. Well, within your rights. Being an elected official does not suborn any of your personal rights.
Well, maybe, Annie, you can word it the way that you feel, because I know you've said this several times, and I know in the past that it just makes it more efficient for district administrators to receive information from one person, and it's not people's opinions. It's about official committee business. Like, what are the questions for the budget? Each one of us should not be emailing or calling district administrators. Basically, principal, I think you should, not have a third teacher in second grade. That those official budget committee duties should be gone through the chair to relay them to district administrators and vice versa.
The definition of conduit is one person. It's one,
But to
it's
whom?
that avenue, right there, it's under the duties of the chair. The
Conduit of information from the committee.
from the committee.
Period. I mean, I think the thing is, do we really need to, have the additional words? And I'd like to suggest that we not try and parse every thing. It's already almost 9 o'clock, and I'd really like us to kind of go through it to, do the guidelines and concentrate on some majors if there are any. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I don't really care if we say to the public and to the district administrators or not. To me, I don't really care.
Well, to the public was that
I understand it. I just don't care if we say it or we don't say it. I would like to just, take a majority view and just move on from that subject. So how many want to say the additional words and how many want to stop at committee? How many want to stop at committee? Okay, and how many want to say the additional words? Okay, so let's just stop at committee and move on to the next one, if that's okay? Because I'm just trying to be more efficient here than to spend hours talking about a couple of words. Okay, go ahead, the vice chair.
It does, just says, oh, vice chair, that's not,
Yeah.
that doesn't change,
That's,
that's,
no change.
no changes, so,
So for the secretary,
they really don't have any duties except to
Be the chair.
so we'd
do the
suggested,
minutes if somebody's not here.
we'd suggested that the words, the secretary should be responsible for the meeting minutes. If the paid secretary is not able to attend the meeting, just be the words that are there. Okay.
Show that up a little.
Attendance.
Regularly doesn't need to be in there, and asking to be excused, no. And the absence things, no. That's, it just, no.
So,
I'm an elected official, I don't have.
Sandy, did you have anything on the attendance?
Anyways, the chair can't excuse somebody.
I wanted to just take it out. I mean, I don't think we need the whole part of attendance. Is there a strong argument for that? Mary, do you have?
Attendance at scheduled budget committee meetings is expected of all committee members. Clearly, if you can't be here, you're going to tell, I think if we're going to include something, it's gotta be the chair or the vice chair, so that you have, what if I can't get a hold of you, so then suddenly I'm not excused, I don't know. It just doesn't make, I will be here every time that I can be, but life happens, and, you know, sometimes you get sick, and sometimes you have an emergency, and, you email and let people know, especially, it's usually last minute. If it's in advance, you're going to be able to tell the person in advance, but I just, you know, we're all here because we want to be here and we care about this community, so I think
Well, again,
attendance
this
is
is,
understood.
I don't, I wanna try and not be personal to individuals who are on this committee now, but looking forward to future committees, especially if there's a time when there's a lot of new members on the committee, that they can look to these guidelines and say, oh, if I'm gonna be absent, I should, to the best of my ability, if I know in advance I'm not going to be at a meeting, I should notify the chair, because if someone doesn't and people just don't show up, we're waiting, looking at the clock, well, are they gonna come? Should we wait? How long should we wait? If the chair knows that you've asked to be excused, then the meeting continues.
Well, I
think
agree you show up,
pretty easy.
you're right, you should at least tell somebody you're not coming,
Right.
but not be excused. You're right, because I know some of you guys have been on boards where you get there and you don't have a quorum.
Right.
You just don't show up, that's not right, yeah.
Right. So that's why we're saying,
Yeah, they need to know.
if you know in advance,
Tell
please
And
notify the chair.
That's fine.
Like we know about yours on the 15th?
them.
Okay,
Just
so
notify the
why
chair.
don't we
Take
go
off
with it the
repeated
way you guys?
absences.
Yeah,
Just,
That's gone.
yeah, so if a member, should we add knows in advance that they cannot attend?
Attendance at scheduled budget committee meetings is expected of all committee members. If a member cannot attend, it shouldn't be he, she, it should be they.
Say
Shall
every
notify the
effort,
board
every
in
effort should be
advance.
made to notify the chair or vice chair in advance.
Actually, the member is singular, they is plural.
Yeah, it's every, yeah, okay.
okay.
Every effort, I like that personally, every effort should be made
To notify the
to
chair.
notify the chair or vice chair. Yeah.
Yep.
And as I've said before, I am not at all comfortable with repeated absence shall be addressed by the chair or committee. I mean, you know, I'm just not comfortable with that.
Vacancies?
Vacancies, that's fine, except the resignation shall be made in writing. Yeah, I'm not sure.
And under bullet 2, a motion to accept the resignation will be made and voted at the next budget committee meeting. It's not made, seconded, discussed, and voted.
So what's that one? A motion to accept the resignation, what?
Will be made and voted at the next budget committee meeting.
At the next budget committee.
Meetings.
Well, I guess the rationale for taking stuff out, the budget committee, just meetings covers everything, so that's why critical work sessions was taken out. Budget, and I think Jim and I thought, well, limited it from September through the deliberative session, limiting, shouldn't be a limit to that. And trying to do a fixed meeting schedule,
No later than September 1st.
like September, like, whoa.
This year on September.
It's now October 12th, we're coming up with our meetings.
Right, so quite honestly, this
Things are just
is
too flexible, can be flexible
the budget committee meeting shall be scheduled as
to occur as needed. And the committee shall determine the meeting schedule.
I think the purpose of the wording, the way it was so that we could agree at the beginning of the term which night and what time worked best for everybody
Well, definitely that.
for the target.
Well, yeah.
And that's part of the organizational meeting that we've already said, the election of officers shall take place annually in April.
But we don't have anything about the April meeting is to work out the budget process, you know, when establishing meeting dates and so forth. So
Where does it say in April?
But it doesn't.
it doesn't.
Yeah, it doesn't, that's what she said, it doesn't.
Oh, okay. On the red altered draft,
Yeah, I had said April, but we'd adopted yours of 30 days.
well, yeah, I mean, we have, oh, okay. Yeah, we have a full committee meeting shall be called for the election of officers within 30 days. After the election, after certification of the election results, but only after the elected members of the sworn in. We can add election of officers and reorganization.
Up under offices.
Yes.
So, say that again, please, I'm sorry.
We can just add into that one about the full committee meeting shall be
Sure.
called for the election of officers and committee reorganization.
What does that mean, committee reorganization?
Reorganization meetings are when we get together, usually to elect officers, and then go, yeah, everybody's happy with us meeting on Thursday? Okay, we're gonna continue to meet on Thursday, so you can figure out the schedules for the rest of the year. Yeah, do we meet at 6:30, 7, yeah.
So that would be setting a time schedule for meetings?
That's all part of the reorganization.
Okay, I don't, yeah, can we say what you just said for setting time of regular meetings? Because reorganization's kind of vague.
Sure.
Okay.
We had time and day when it was struck from the original.
Yeah, I just try not to repeat what's already.
Okay, so for the election of officers and set time and date of meetings.
Moving on, page 2, top of page 2.
We haven't quite finished on the
Oh, we didn't?
meetings.
Okay.
I'm not sure that we've reached a consensus on meetings. Perhaps we have.
Well, under meetings, we also left in the bit about comment.
What?
I'm reading from.
You're ahead.
Yeah, I'm reading
page
it.
1 here.
Okay.
But budget committee meetings will be scheduled as needed is exactly concisely what
We do.
we do.
I
They don't occur only from September through the first deliberative session. A fixed meeting schedule isn't possible to do by the first meeting in September. And polling members to determine the most convenient date, frequency, start times, and anticipated end times.
We already did that in April.
We've already done that in April, and
And it's a
start
student's
times and
margin.
anticipated, start time you can do, but tonight is perfect proof of anticipated end time. I load that unless somebody's willing to go into the parking lot and self-immolate if we go a minute past the anticipated end time.
Burn themselves up.
So is it okay if we go with this suggestion, scheduled to occur, meetings scheduled to occur as needed, the committee shall determine the meeting schedule? And is that okay instead of trying to set it up here?
Yes.
Well, I think
Yes, yes, yes.
the reason for critical work sessions are basically what we did tonight, which is, these are the things, the meetings that we need to do our work. If we want to have a meeting for discussing things like policies, that will be done as needed. But that there should be a regular set schedule for those critical work sessions.
And that's kind of what we determined, our schedule tonight. So, I mean, I'm not sure that one excludes the other.
I don't either, but I don't have a problem leaving critical work sessions in if you want to.
I mean, if you want to, it's fine.
The only reason that
It's still a meeting.
and that was one of my takeaways, is that all we can do as a committee is have a meeting. We don't have critical work sessions, you know, don't address an agenda as being a critical work session or a work session. Work sessions are
Is that a technical term?
it is a non-technical term.
Okay.
Every time we get together, it is pure and simply a meeting. RSA describes what happens in a meeting. RSA describes how meetings must be limited, what you need for a quorum to make a meeting. So other than a subcommittee, and those are the only two things that we can have, is we can have a subcommittee, or we can have a meeting of the body as a whole.
I think the intent here was that we don't just call meetings because we want to call meetings. That there needs to be, that we're all volunteers, and that we need to have some set schedule so that we know that we're going to set aside whatever night, instead of just saying that the chair has the power to say, well, let's meet on Wednesday next week, and, you know, I'd like to discuss this, can we meet on Friday?
And we had already decided that would be, that's in that first thing under officers and reorganizational meeting, is to set.
It also is covered by saying the committee shall determine the meeting schedule. I mean, that means it's
Right.
not up to any one person,
Right.
including the chair, to just say, oh, let's have a meeting. So I think it's covered.
Yeah, they're scheduled as needed.
I mean, one of the things that I want to know is, do you think that it would be good to say with something so that future people who are interested in the budget committee understand that the bulk of the work is done between September and the deliberative session, or, I mean, they pretty much
I
know
would
what
say
they're going to
that
run
at
for the
this
office.
point, considering the fact that last year I started in April, once the budget was accepted, trying to figure out what had been voted in. So time during the summer, I believe you'll recall, I put in some information requests in like July. Once, you know, the previous budget was done, so I could figure out exactly where we were going. In a perfect world, we could say, yes, we only need, you know, we will meet 6 times between September 15th and January 15th. But until I see otherwise, I would honestly rather leave it as vague as this and allow, I wouldn't be able to support that kind of restrictions in there.
Is everybody okay with that? Do you have anybody have any serious reservations? Okay. Page 2.
Well, you can see we'd say that comments from the public will have a time limit. Chair has discretion to grant extensions of time. And what's it, might be another 3 minutes, who knows? Whatever, just leave that up to the discretion of the chair to allow the person to complete their point. Are there comments?
So
That's all.
you don't want to limit committee members to a 3-minute limit? You want to leave that as wide, just wide and broad?
Yeah.
I think we should set some guidelines, because I do recall, a meeting where a member of the public was allowed to go on for at least 10 minutes without interruption, without anyone saying, can you finish your point? And I think that leaving it open allows for some people might get the advantage of speaking for 10 to 15 minutes if the chair, not naming any names, but if a chair agrees with that person's position, and if the chair doesn't agree with that person's position, might say, well, your time is up. So I think by having a guideline to say that, you know, the chair really should limit to 3 minutes and maybe grant another 1 or 2 minutes, but that people need to know that they need to get to their point, and that no person in the public will be given advantage or disadvantage according to what they're saying.
I think that point's well taken. We just said that the committee has discretion to grant extensions of time.
I think that the chair should do that as part of the leadership position.
I mean,
Well-
the chair can be overruled by the committee. But
Yeah, I was just gonna say, the chair can always be, and quite honestly, having seen this happen on
Yeah,
probably for the past 3 years, the few times that we have somebody in the audience, it ends up being a little bit of a monologue that has always gone over 3 minutes. I've never seen a chair stop somebody. Especially like we did last year. I think we were at like 7 or 10.
Well, our new superintendent
Yeah.
and new chair have been pretty adamant about what is allowed to be said in public.
School board.
School board. What did I say?
You just said new chair.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah.
the school
But
board.
unless we're planning on having a little metal plate there with a Tesla coil above it, I mean, quite honestly.
Well, we could take all of these things to extremes.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
The
I'm.
purpose of this is to give a guideline that's reasonable.
And
I
know,
think
but
saying to
one-
someone, you need to make your point within 3 minutes, helps them to also formulate their, what they want to
As long
say.
as you don't mind, when I sit here and an administrator is standing up there under public comment, prattling on, and the 3 minutes is up, and I take a gavel out and pound on the table.
I have no problem with that.
Okay.
If they
But
are never
Cheryl's
public
right.
speaking in public comment.
Everybody needs to get treated fairly.
Yeah.
That's the point, yes.
And that's why you have that.
I have no problem with
That's
that.
what-
If they object, you can
Hold it,
say-
hold it, one at a time,
You're
please.
right, you're right about that, just so everybody gets a fair shake.
Okay,
I mean, I've been told, it's just crazy, 3 minutes is almost up, oh gee, thanks. Yeah. Not like you.
That helps you
So,
focus.
moving on, can we accept this the way it's written? The way the guidelines subcommittee put it, or do you have something else?
Well,
For an additional 1 minute, I'll accept.
Are we
I'll
going to
accept
have a timekeeper? Is the chair gonna become a time, I'm
No.
serious.
yeah, you had to have an
It's gotta be,
Because
Yeah.
I'm serious. If
no,
we're
I wanna
set
listen to
3
what the
minutes-
person has to say.
Okay, that's,
So it's gonna be approximate, and if somebody wants to remind me as chair while I'm here that I've let the person go too long and it's already 3 minutes, I'll be happy to hear the reminder. And if it seems like it's going on a really long time, I'll ask them to please wrap it up. Okay, so we'll keep it as close as we can to that without,
These were called,
got it, okay, are you gaveling me?
no,
No.
And again, it's not just this committee, we're thinking future.
Yes.
committees.
Right.
Provide them with guidelines and expectations for smooth and efficient operation.
And fairness.
Right.
Yeah.
So which way are you?
Yeah, where are we with this?
Charleston's comments or Andy's or just
I think-
what was originally written?
I'm wondering if we want to take out the from committee members, because I'd like to respect our committee members to be able to speak, you know,
and
express
sometimes
themselves,
we have an occasional committee member who needs more than 3 minutes to do
right? Hopefully it's not venting, but it's,
Well,
it's giving good information and input to the rest of us.
Should we maybe specify here during, quote, public comment? Because when I wrote, and from committee members, I was thinking of that time in the agenda where we have committee member comment. I don't mean to restrict committee members when we're having deliberations.
well, no, I honestly wouldn't put it there because there are times that various committee members, and I will list myself as one, and somebody who's, I've known as a school board member before. We've had longish lists of things that have come up between meetings, and yeah, we can easily go over 3 minutes, but it's because we have points that we have to bring up.
What do you think about putting during public comment section of the agenda too?
Because you're talking about committee member comment too, so.
Yeah.
The public's only going to speak during public
Yeah.
comment.
I mean, we can pretty much agree that during public comment, we should not be responding.
No. But we can in committee.
I don't think you need the word all. Comments from the public.
So comments from the public will have a time limit of 3 minutes or approximately 3 minutes.
3
In the
minutes.
interest of efficiency.
Just say 3 minutes.
Okay. Chair has discretion to grant an extension for an additional minute to allow the person to complete their comments.
I'm okay with it.
Yeah, point is a bad word, comment is better.
Yes.
I like your addition from the School Board Association sample rules of order.
I do too. Mary did too.
Pam sent that our way after our last meeting. She said that our own school board has considered this, has not yet adopted it or deliberated it, but, you know, they've got other pressing business issues that they're dealing with now, but they will likely revisit it at some point.
I think it states very well,
Yeah.
you know, being polite. Okay,
That's
so
not what
number
it
5.
says.
Pardon me?
It doesn't say be polite. And who's gonna determine that?
Allowing it.
This one, we're gonna go to the mat on. I don't care if we're here all night on this one. You
It
guys
says,
watch
for
this.
those
I'm not gonna
video.
ever agree to this.
All speakers should be courteous and speak to the issues, not the individuals raising them. All comments and questions should be directed to the chair. The chair will decide whether to recognize another board member or staff member to respond. The chair will not allow personal attacks or inappropriate language. I don't
I think that's
know.
very well stated.
I think it's terrible.
Let's vote on it.
On
No.
what basis do you think it's terrible?
We wanna go with each word?
No.
Yo, I'm gonna go with each word.
All right.
But
Who's gonna define courteous?
There's a kernel in here that I can support.
Nope.
All comments and questions should be directed to the chair.
That I can agree.
That is definite. And the chair has the right to decide whether or not to recognize a fellow board member to respond. However, the first one, all speakers should be courteous and speak to the issues, not the individuals raising them. That is just, that's a little bit too fluffy, and it fits with the last one. The chair will not allow personal attacks or inappropriate language.
It's basically that we're agreeing that
Right.
if somebody sits there and starts swearing or yelling at somebody, that we're going to, that I'm
we're
going
gonna
to say, sorry, that's out of line.
Trust me, saying that that's out of line for somebody that is in that state of emotional distress is not going to do anything but upset them even more. So what we need to do is, if we're anticipating that kind of an evening, we need to have a police officer on.
I,
The first part, all
I think
speakers
again,
should
we're
be courteous
taking
and
this to
speak
the
to the
extreme.
issue. All speakers should be courteous. That is common sense, that is common attempt. And speak to the issues, not the individuals raising them. I haven't got the foggiest idea of exactly what that is.
Oh, I'm very clear on what that means.
Well, who defines it? Who's gonna sit here and define courteous? And really, who's gonna define that?
It's a
Well, we could
guideline.
look it up in Webster's dictionary.
It's a guideline.
No. Huh. We've been talking about these are guidelines and how they may get used in the future and how they may get used as a hammer.
Yeah.
As Cheryl just talked about with fairness is how it can be used as a hammer against somebody. Well, who's gonna define what the issue is? Who's gonna be the issue cop?
Well,
Says, well, that's not the issue, if I think it's an issue.
No, it's
Speak to the issue.
issue not to the individual is what that goes together. So in other words, if
And
Ms. Sear said she would like to have meetings until midnight, I would say, I don't agree that we should meet till midnight. I'm not gonna say, Ms. Sear, you're up.
apparently,
You're obviously a night owl and you have no concept of time. I have a job.
Okay, do you agree that would be out of line? To say
Apparently.
something to her like that?
apparently you've never watched the United States Congress and Senate.
I'm not
Let
in
me
the United
finish.
States Congress or
And
Senate.
when they stand up and say, referring to Mr. Kennedy, the senator from Massachusetts, oh, they used the name, God forbid. They do it all the time, and no one, and it's
This
not
is not
inappropriate.
this is not the Senate.
Well-
We're trying to keep it kind of civil here, and
Oh,
if I got paid what they got paid at the Senate, I might have different rules.
now that's,
If you have a.
so you can't address an individual?
If I can, put it this way.
Okay, in the
The
interest,
chair has the ability to, when you hear a comment, quickly wander off being addressed to the chair to, Mr. Swayze used such and such and so and so. The chair has the ability, and we do need to get you a permanent gavel, to say, you can stop things and say that's inappropriate. Words like courteous,
Issues.
just, those are very soft words that, okay.
okay, how about if all speakers shall speak to the issues?
But
All
what
comments
do
and questions should be directed to the chair. The
What's
chair will
the
not will decide whether to recognize another board member or staff member to respond, period.
personally, some of that also sounds,
Staff member, what is that?
Oh, sometimes, well, I mean, I might ask,
In the audience?
I could, yeah, if Michelle was sitting in the audience, or if there were, a person who had
An outburst.
knowledge.
Or in response to something.
Right.
I mean, we had instances of that last.
Yeah.
I fear that the word speak to the issues is the camel's nose
Yeah.
for,
Let's take out the comma there. Or say, speak to the issues as opposed to speaking to the individual.
Or just speak to the issues.
there is a
That's what
modern
I thought.
attempt afoot to tell people in the public that this is the agenda, and if it's not on the agenda, you cannot make a comment about it.
That's not speaking to the issues. I don't think that that's what that means. That's the way it's interpreted right now in the school.
That sounds like it's heading in that direction. And I would rather, we have so few people that come here and make comments. I listen to anything
One
they
time
have
a
to
year.
say, whether I agree with it or
Two
not.
times a year.
I fear that this is one of those, it's left in there as a little kernel, and it will grow into the public may only comment on those items that are already on the agenda, and
I agree, it's like
How
what
about-
it's like what Cheryl said earlier, this leaves room for a chair, and maybe even a board, to continue to shut down certain people and allow other people to speak while they decide what the issue is.
How about to speak to the issue being raised, not to the individual raising that issue? Does that clarify? That's not
No,
restricting you from.
that just threw two heaps of,
Okay,
because what is?
in the interest,
Whatever issue the person is talking about.
Here's your thing.
in the interest of moving forward and getting out of here and adopting some guidelines, at least to start with, it sounds to me like we could all agree on including all comments and questions, that sentence, and the chair will decide whether to recognize another board member or staff member to respond. Leave out those other two sentences for the time being, and those can be, it can be amended at some future date.
I agree with that.
I think we need to give the chair the authority to not allow personal attacks and inappropriate language.
Okay, what's a personal attack?
Carlton, stop it
Who's
right
gonna
now. That's a
define that,
personal
Cheryl?
attack. That's a personal attack. I was demonstrating. it.
Oh,
But
you're
what
demonstrating.
happened in that?
Oh, I missed it.
See, you didn't like that, did you?
What would happen in
And
that case?
inappropriate language,
The chair to
we
please
only discover inappropriate
call a
language
point of
once
order.
it's been uttered.
Right,
It's like porn, you know when you see it, but you can't define it.
You know, and I don't know what inappropriate language is now. The stuff I'm hearing on the radio is like, wow. It's
Oh,
like,
yeah,
it's
well,
apparently the
let's-
SEC is really broad with that.
Let's have this committee rise above what's on the radio
Oh, it's
and
government
be a
regulated.
productive committee and be appropriate.
What is inappropriate language?
The chair will determine.
Is this like pornography? I know it when I see it.
Right. The chair will determine that.
There you go.
Yeah, really.
The
well, it
chair-
does allow, as Mary said, for any individual to raise a point of order if I'm chair and I'm not addressing something and somebody feels that something is really kind of going nutty, to raise a point of order and bring it to the committee, so.
Can I vote on the word?
Yeah.
So I'll go with, take out the first sentence and start with all comments and questions should be directed to the chair decide whether to recognize another board member or staff member to respond. I would like to keep, the chair will not allow personal attacks, or the chair has the discretion to, not allow personal attacks and inappropriate
I still don't know how you define personal attacks.
Well, there is the difficulty that how do I not allow something? You know, I mean, it's just, it's kind of
That's the
like,
problem that I have with
Yeah,
that phraseology is unless there's a metal plate there and the minute you hear the start of the F
Alright,
word,
we need
you
one of
hit
those
a button and, the test will go. There's
All right, so
nothing
not
here.
allow, we'll take out allow. We'll
discourage
wrap the
discourage
gavel.
personal attacks. How about discourage personal attacks? Or we'll request an end to personal attacks and inappropriate
Maintain
language.
order.
We'll seek to maintain order.
There you go.
That makes much more sense
The
than.
chair will seek to maintain order.
What does that mean?
Well, say it's personal attacks, what does that mean? Yeah, I know, Cheryl, you and I disagree, you don't think you should mention anybody's names, but
Yeah, no.
But if somebody in the public comes in here and says, as you're discussing this budget, we've had some discussions regarding in the past regarding the guidance director. And I believe that,
Earlier.
huh?
That happened earlier.
And then somebody drops a name, everybody's gonna go haywire because you mentioned the name of a previous guidance director.
Right.
Like,
Well,
wait a minute,
if
they're
you're-
a public employee, they work here, we pay them, but you can't mention their name.
Well, if you're
So that's,
attacking
see,
them,
you think that's a personal attack, me, I just think, what's wrong with that? They worked here, they're a public employee, their name got mentioned. Whoa.
if their name is mentioned in conjunction with attacking them, I think that is inappropriate.
Yeah, I see. That's
Well, that's
the
subjective
slope we
part
had.
of it.
That's actually, no, now you're seeing exactly why you can't put it in there because it's too, what one chair thinks is a personal attack, another chair maybe sits sitting there going, yes.
And you can't let that, you can't let that.
Yes, I know.
Well, it's a matter of definition, not of, one team or the other.
I mean.
How about if we take a vote, and I will go with whatever the vote is.
As will I. Okay, so at this point, Brett, what we have is we have kind of an agreement on the second two sentences, and it's the third sentence, or the fourth sentence really, which we're voting to keep in or keep out. So let's, all in favor of keeping the fourth sentence in, as written, please raise your hands.
You're talking about the chair will not allow.
The chair will not
The
allow
last
personal
sentence.
attacks, yeah.
inappropriate language.
Right.
So
Chair will not allow personal attacks or inappropriate
Keep it
language.
as written.
As written. All in favor of keeping that in, please say aye. All in favor of not having it?
Anybody want to change the word?
Abstentions?
I did, maintain order. I mean, I think it's a good idea to have an expectation. Isn't that sort of a legal, not even a precedent, but don't you kind of need that if you do rule someone out of order, don't you have to have a reason why you have to kind of have, don't you want some backup and say, well, we're not allowing, it doesn't have to be personal, it doesn't have to be something so subjective, I don't think, but it seems like you would want to say something about the chair has the discretion of maintaining order and deciding what that means.
Then we have to come up with different wording, and that can be done, but not at 9:30 at night as my brain is going.
So that's why I didn't really.
Well, we could say, we could have a quick vote, the chair will seek to maintain order. Yes or no?
I will accept that, the chair will seek to maintain order.
Fine, whatever that means.
Whatever it means.
Whatever that means, that's fine.
I mean, it's,
I guess the chair decides that.
yeah, okay, all in favor, everybody? Okay, all right, so we're good.
All right,
Let's see if we can't quickly finish this.
let's see.
There's not a lot of changes in this one, we might be able to zip right through it.
Subcommittee stuff, yeah, we should
Well,
be
this is
changing.
just terms, we don't know if Sandra.
You know what?
Yeah,
I don't think we need to change, none of those changes really change anything. Can we, I mean, is there any, can we just leave them the way they are? In the subcommittee? This proposed change is, I mean, it doesn't really change the intent or anything.
what do you mean, as it's written before my
Are you
changes?
proposing
Yeah.
separate
Yeah.
changes as written?
Well, yeah, actually, no, because the subcommittee one, the formation of a subcommittee, and it should just be, we don't do task forces and we do not do ad hoc committees. The formation of a subcommittee may be created by a majority vote of the budget committee. Period. That's all that, I mean, that's the legal standard, that is the business model the school district has always used.
So what you want is the formation
The
of a
other side is editorial.
Okay, the formation of a subcommittee may be created by a majority vote of the budget committee. The
Correct.
focus and expected outcome should be clearly defined and time limited, and then go on.
Yeah.
Is everybody okay with that?
So you don't want to put the process in?
Allows more time to focus on that's all editorial comment.
You're talking about the bullets? No, I'm saying
Yeah,
leave the bullets.
Leave the bullets?
Yeah, we left the
Yeah.
bullets, we just took out the
Yeah, leave
editorial.
all the bullets.
And the numeral 2 should be spelled TWO.
Where is that?
Bullet number 2.
Bullet number 2. It
Bullet
doesn't
number
spell it out.
2, so the number 2, you want to replace it with the word 2, is that what you're saying?
That would be correct.
I mean, we had originally
Okay.
deleted 3 because when we stopped getting to 3 through.
I think this is inappropriate.
That's enough come out the way.
Maintain support
It's not.
And simply stating a minimum, yes, but
Let's
going
not
in.
parse it, let's not parse it, just go with it. Just go with it.
So we're taking out preferably 3?
Yeah, okay.
A minimum of 2 is.
Okay.
Alright.
Okay, so are we good? Can we go on to voting?
So are we, Jim suggested we take out task force and ad hoc committee?
Yes.
Yeah, because we don't do.
Yeah, just do the formation of a subcommittee.
And I apologize, the rest of my edits and stuff.
Yeah, they're not there, but we have them
I
on
got 'em
paper
here.
in front
I
of
got
us.
'em here.
Under voting, we don't do ad hoc votes.
That was just kind of a semantic. Some people called it ad hoc, some people called it straw vote.
Straw poll
Straw poll,
is
yeah.
actually an accepted defined thing, ad hoc vote. And I'm sorry, but you would never get me to vote in a straw poll just to see who's on what side.
Yeah.
I mean, that just, that's,
That's how it's defined in the Robert's rules.
Yeah.
well, yeah.
Yeah, we didn't make that
We're
one up.
trying to.
We got that from somebody official.
Yeah, however, this isn't a Robert's rule. And the next one is the fact that procedural or administrative issues will require an official motion, not procedural and administrative issues are basically what we do here. So if we want to say, yes, this is going to be our procedure, it should actually have a motion and a vote. Same with an administrative issue. We've seen alternate times when those things that are not voted do not get responded to. Now, really, this is my reaction.
Or documented.
Can you give an example? Because I'm.
Yeah.
I can, you remember last, I won't mention any names, the chairman last year,
Thank you.
the chairman of the last year's school board, you were there when he would do this, do I have a thumbs up?
Oh, yeah, right.
Like, come on, keep doing that. You remember that getting done? Like,
We are
okay,
not
who's-
doing thumbs up.
Who's doing a thumbs up?
So that's
Not
okay,
only
but
that-
I'm not sure what Jim means when he says that there's been a lot of times when administrative issues were.
Last
I'm
year,
not sure
and
interpreting that word the same way.
I will cite specific instances, and hopefully things will change, but things, you never know what happens. Last year, we asked administrative questions and we asked procedural questions, which is part of the way we do things, of the administration in the school district. And I was once very impolitely informed that, well, what was the motion on the board regarding that question?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And
We
when I
had-
said
we
we
did
did vote,
everything
well,
by
if you
motion
didn't
last year.
vote,
Yeah.
it was simply, you had a straw poll, straw polls are not listed in minutes.
Right,
So
so I'm thinking procedural issue would be something like, do we want to meet on Tuesdays or Thursdays?
that should
And
definitely,
it's like
that should have a
consensus.
vote, so that everybody has a recorded response.
Really?
Yeah,
Of whether we meet Tuesdays or Thursdays, we have to all vote on it and put, Jim voted yay.
Kind of
and Mary
taking
voted
it
nay.
kind of far. I mean, it just makes it more official if we have a motion and a vote, then we know where everybody is, we record it, it's done, it's out there for the public to know what we're doing, it's transparent.
Well, the intent of this was that we don't get bogged down with making motions and voting on everything, that things that could easily be decided by consensus, and that can be put in the minutes. That the board had a straw poll that they would meet on Thursdays, or they didn't want to meet.
We're gonna
continue
have a
meeting
straw
after
poll
9:30.
right now, whether we're going to finish these guidelines or are we going to quit. So I'm calling for a straw poll right now. Do you want to stay for, let's make a maximum of 5 minutes? Actually, we still have public comment and we still have committee comment and we have the next agenda. Folks, what do you want to do?
I'll move the meeting next agenda.
Okay.
On
Okay.
this agenda.
We're deleting the next agenda. Do you want to set another 15 minutes and, just finish this, or do you want to?
I'm afraid we're gonna have a sleeper issue here.
Yeah.
I know who's Mr. Black.
Yeah.
I'm gonna suggest that we stop here And that either Mary or I will make these official, what we've suggested here tonight. And then at a future meeting, if we have time, we'll do the last three, voting.
I was just gonna say, there are only two
Documentation.
more changes left. Let's get them done before my mood changes.
Is it gonna get better or worse?
You never know. However, this is, I mean, it's simply,
So do we wanna go? We're going? 10 minutes?
I'd rather go, I'd
We
rather
don't really
go.
have another meeting scheduled.
No, we don't.
No, I know, we're getting into
Let's get
budget.
this done, we'll have some guidelines for
Right.
everyone and
Yeah,
future meetings.
I mean, let's just
So
do
the
it.
next item, proposed additions, that's fine, yeah. Chair will not accept negative motions, great.
that works.
That works. That's what it should be.
And then the paper copies.
Yeah, the next one just guarantees for those of us that are not so good with the computers, that paper copies will be, because if you leave this in just as it says now, documents can only be submitted or distributed in a uniform format on Launchpad.
Okay, I agree with that.
We say offered to the committee members unless they opt out.
Well, the paper copies of all such documents shall be given to the committee. This is for, and it's terrible, I just forgot her name. The business administrator,
Michelle. Yeah.
Michelle. She knows that, okay, anticipate you're gonna have to print out copies of this, and then she can call around and go, Cheryl, do you want a paper copy or you
Well,
have?
it's gonna go through me, but
Yeah.
yeah. But, the distinguishing of saying it's unless you opt out means that it's kind of more okay, there's less of a, kind of, ooh, you want paper, So, it's not a judgment that way, it's just kind of like, they're both fine.
Yeah.
So I'm for that.
And honestly, the intent here was my first view of the server and just not being able to identify or find anything, not knowing what ends up. I was thinking it's a good idea to have it documented and labeled for the purpose of being able to.
And like the.
That part I agree 100%. However, I wouldn't want, and this is just experience speaking, I wouldn't want it to be interpreted about, oh, we're not doing anything, you can't have anything in paper. Now, if you can't read it on the computer, fine.
Exactly.
And I think formatted and titled makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And, other people are putting things on besides me now, so,
Right.
they're not on me.
And
So
dates.
it should be identified who it's from, and when, and what.
So are we in agreement that we're going to add paper copies of all such documents shall be given to the committee members unless they opt out?
Yes.
So can I just ask a question? As an example, that enrollment information that I provided to you earlier, it was gonna be 5 pages, and I didn't want to print 5 pages and distribute them off. Is that okay to do that electronically?
It's a wonderful thing.
I just want to make sure that, because I'm reading this saying that I should have, paper copies of all such documents shall be given to.
Right.
So to me, that's a directive that I need to make sure and supply everybody with a paper copy.
Well,
Is that?
Or you have to ask everybody, do you want paper, do you want paper, do you want to opt out?
That's just an example, but to me, that's.
in order to satisfy this guideline, at this meeting or the next meeting, the chair can, say, okay, everybody, let me know, send me an email tomorrow or snail mail if you prefer paper. Do you want electronic, do you want paper? Is for your standard default.
Okay, and I will do that. So we have a motion to accept these
What was
minutes.
the question?
We got a question
mark
mark.
under communications?
What?
The question mark under communications.
Oh,
Yeah,
sorry.
what does that mean? Communications with the public.
So when
Mary or
the,
Cheryl, what does that mean to you?
to communicate what the committee's doing, involved in, actions of the committee?
Communications.
Those are examples of communications. Is that?
Such as minutes? Oh, okay.
Well, is that a limiting list or is that just a partial list?
You can say such as.
Such as.
I was just gonna say, put in such as,
That's fine, do such as.
because otherwise it would be, okay, nobody can speak to anybody in the public.
Well, yeah, because if Andy wants to go down to the Fish and Game Club and tell them what we do.
Right.
Communications with
Could
the
be
public
you.
will take such forms as
Yeah, it's a
minutes,
presentation.
articles, and presentations.
Yeah, such
Okay,
as.
such forms, yeah.
That's it.
Everything else is okay?
Yeah, all right, thank you very much. Thank you, you two, for doing that.
So a motion is to accept these
As amended. Yeah. And we have a second? Second. All in favor? And that's unanimous. Wow. Whoa! Okay.
So my plan is I will do the revisions and send them out to everybody, or should I give you all paper copies?
Paper.
Oh, good.
You can email one.
Email.
Oh, well, yeah,
I just print them if I.
for the moment,
That's right, if I
I
want it on
paper copy.
You can email.
Okay, it is now time for public comment.
Don't dare, you dare do it, Pam.
Do you guys have anything to
Too
say?
late.
Okay, time for committee comment. Does anybody have anything they want to say?
I do, but not tonight. Not tonight.
Then can we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second?
Tammy? Okay, all in favor? And we are adjourned at 9:42. Thank you. Woo!